Imagine being a ruthless prosecutor who always plays by his own rules, until one false accusation sends him behind bars for a crime he never committed. Inside prison, he is constantly bullied and beaten by the inmates, while the people responsible for framing him remain free. But instead of giving up, he begins planning a dangerous comeback to expose the truth and get his revenge. The story opens with a large crowd gathered to protest against a resort project planned by a company called Far East on land belonging to a bird sanctuary. The protesters hold banners and chant slogans, demanding that the government protect the sanctuary. Suddenly, a group of thugs storms into the peaceful demonstration. They pretend to be environmentalists and bird lovers, but they are actually armed with iron rods and have been hired by the company itself. The police try to control the situation, but the attackers fight back and knock several officers to the ground. One thug goes even further and brutally punches a policeman in the head until he starts bleeding. Naturally, the media presents the incident from a completely different angle. Soon, public opinion turns against the protesters, allowing the company to successfully push its own narrative. We then meet John, a government lawyer who had suspected from the beginning that Far East was responsible for the entire disturbance. Determined to uncover the truth, John legally summons the company's owner, Victor, for questioning. As soon as the meeting begins, Victor denies having anything to do with the violence. Instead, he threatens John and tells him to stop ruining his own career. He even points out that government officers have been injured and demands that John arrest those responsible. Victor's arrogant attitude makes John lose his temper. In a moment of rage, John punches him several times and orders him to find out what he is going to do next. Despite questioning Victor, John finds no useful evidence. He then arrests the man who had brutally attacked the policeman. During interrogation, the suspect suddenly claims that he suffers from asthma and cannot breathe without his inhaler. However, he refuses to admit that someone had hired him to participate in the riot. Instead, he claims that he is genuinely passionate about birds and had come to the protest prepared with detailed knowledge about them. He even memorized information about different birds so he could prove that he was a real bird lover. But John immediately realizes that the answers have been rehearsed. He grabs the suspect by the hair and pulls him toward the wall. Then he tears open the man's shirt and exposes the tattoos covering his arms. The tattoos reveal the truth. The supposed bird lover is actually a gangster who has connections, money, and powerful people protecting him. John soon realizes that the case involves both the criminal underworld and influential figures in the government. Because of this, John's senior prosecutor, Paul, warns him not to get too deeply involved. He tells John that the case could destroy his career and put his life at risk. But John is a man of strong principles. His determination to uncover the truth and deliver justice prevents him from backing down. Unfortunately, before the case can move forward, the gangster suddenly dies inside the interrogation room. Immediately, the blame falls on John. According to the official records, John was the person who brought the suspect into the interrogation room. Even worse, every CCTV camera in the area mysteriously stopped working that day. Then Mike, a friend of the dead gangster, gives testimony claiming that his friend never suffered from asthma. With the main witness against him and no camera footage to support his story, John has almost nothing left to say in his defense. But the truth is far more sinister. The entire setup was secretly planned by Paul's side. Paul had taken away the gangster's inhaler, deliberately leaving him unable to breathe during the interrogation. He then sends one of his men to convince John to confess. The man assures John that everything has already been arranged with the judge. He tells John that if he admits responsibility, he will only spend 1 year in prison. Trusting the promise, John confesses in court. But the moment he does, everything changes. Instead of receiving a 1-year sentence, John is sentenced to 15 years behind bars. Paul doesn't even bother defending him. The only important piece of evidence, the inhaler, is thrown into a river and disappears forever. John is then taken to prison. The inmates celebrate when they see him arrive. After all, John had personally helped send many criminals behind bars, and now he has been thrown directly into their territory. Inside the prison, John is completely alone and helpless. The inmates repeatedly beat him, while the guards turn a blind eye to the violence. In this prison, the guards only seem to care when someone actually dies. One day, John receives shocking news. The government has officially approved Far East's resort project. Then he sees Paul on television, smiling alongside the company's officials. At that moment, John finally understands the entire conspiracy. Everything had been planned to silence him and clear the way for Far East. That night, John lies awake in his prison cell, unable to stop thinking about what happened. He decides that he must request a retrial and prove his innocence. However, the prison warden has already sided with Paul. He has no intention of helping John get released. John's request is rejected. The warden then mocks him and tells him that everyone knows he didn't commit the crime, but he will still have to remain behind bars. Outside, snow begins falling from the sky. John looks at the snow and makes a powerful vow. He promises himself that he will one day erase the stain on his name. Sometime later, John discovers that one of the prison guards is involved in a long-running land dispute. Using his legal knowledge, John studies the case and manages to resolve the guard's years-old legal problem. After that, the attitude of the prison guards toward John suddenly changes. Until then, he had been beaten almost every day. Now the guards begin treating him with respect. To return the favor, one of the guards asks John about the inmates who have been constantly harassing him. him. Soon, even the prison warden needs John's help with a legal problem. As a reward, the warden gives him a large supply of cigarettes. John quickly understands something important about prison life. Outside, money can buy influence. Inside prison, cigarettes serve almost the same purpose. So John distributes the cigarettes among the inmates. The prisoners happily accept them, and their attitude toward him changes almost immediately. His reputation begins to grow throughout the prison. In no time, John rises to the top and becomes the unofficial boss of the entire prison. He had a thorough understanding of the law, and this knowledge made him extremely valuable inside the prison. John began advising other inmates on their legal cases, often helping them find ways to reduce their sentences. 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. One day, a television program about bird migration was playing in the prison. At that moment, a newly arrived thug began boasting about his knowledge of birds. But one particular thing he said immediately caught John's attention. The prisoner mentioned a fact that was exactly the same as something the gangster, whose death had sent John to prison, had once said. John realized that this could not simply be a coincidence. He suspected that the new prisoner might also be one of the men hired by Far East. John immediately ordered his men to bring the prisoner to his cell. The man's name was Sam. Sam was shocked when he entered and found John sitting comfortably in his cell, eating fried chicken. It looked like John was living far better than an ordinary prisoner. John offered Sam some chicken and a cold drink before calmly asking him how he knew so much about birds. Sam tried to avoid giving him a straight answer. John then offered him a deal. He promised to help Sam get out of prison, but there was one condition. Sam had to tell him the truth. After thinking for a moment, Sam finally confessed. He revealed that the entire riot had been staged by the Far East Company. The company had recruited small-time criminals and unemployed troublemakers, trained them, and deliberately sent them into a confrontation with the police. Their real objective was to make genuine environmental activists look violent and discredit their protest. Once public opinion turned against the protesters, the government would have an excuse to hand the bird sanctuary's land over to Far East. After hearing the confession, John came up with a carefully calculated plan. He would get Sam released and send him outside to collect solid evidence. With that evidence, John hoped to expose both his superior, Paul, and Far East's owner, Victor. If everything worked, he could finally prove his innocence. John already knew that Sam was clever. After all, anyone capable of deceiving so many people could not be completely foolish. But John also understood that a con man could never be trusted blindly. He needed a way to keep Sam under his control. Before Sam's release, John began training him in the ways of the legal world. He even taught Sam how senior prosecutors signed important documents. Sam practiced the signature repeatedly because it would become an important part of John's plan. Once the training was finished, John used his legal knowledge to secure Sam's acquittal. The case against Sam was already weak, so getting him released wasn't particularly difficult. Before leaving the prison, Sam promised John that he would never forget his help and would do whatever was required of him. Once outside, Sam organized a drinking party with several of his former associates. Among them was Mike, the friend of the gangster whose death had destroyed John's life. Sam deliberately got Mike heavily drunk. Once Mike was intoxicated, Sam managed to make him reveal the truth. Mike finally admitted that he had lied in court and had given false testimony in exchange for money. Sam secretly recorded the entire confession. He then sent the recording to John inside the prison. John immediately included the evidence with his retrial request and submitted everything to the court. Meanwhile, Paul was busy pursuing a much bigger ambition. With the support of several wealthy businessmen, he was campaigning to become the city's mayor. He was so focused on his political future that he completely overlooked John's plan. But during an election campaign, even the smallest scandal could destroy a candidate's reputation. When Paul discovered that John had submitted a recording to the court, he became furious. He confronted Victor and angrily demanded that Mike be silenced before the evidence could cause any damage. Victor felt humiliated by Paul's behavior, but he couldn't openly oppose him. The two men had been working together for years. Victor had used their partnership to expand Far East's business, while Paul had benefited financially from the arrangement. Victor immediately tracked down Mike. He had Mike brutally beaten until both of his legs were broken. Meanwhile, Paul invited a prosecutor named Daniel to dinner. Daniel was responsible for handling John's case. He had the authority to reject the request for a retrial if he wanted to, but Daniel knew exactly how dangerous it would be to oppose someone as powerful as Paul. Under Paul's pressure, Daniel agreed to bury the matter and prevent the retrial from moving forward. When Sam heard what had happened to Mike, his confidence disappeared. He contacted John and admitted that he was terrified. He told John that although he had helped him get out of prison, he couldn't risk his own life anymore. John had already suspected that Sam couldn't be trusted completely, so he decided to remind Sam who was really in control. John's men beat Sam and threatened to reveal all of his criminal activities to Victor if he refused to cooperate. Sam knew exactly what would happen if Victor learned everything about him. With no other choice, he agreed to continue following John's instructions. John then sent him directly to Paul's election campaign. Sam disguised himself as one of Paul's enthusiastic supporters and began dancing wildly in the middle of the crowd. His performance attracted everyone's attention, including Paul's. It also caught the eye of a woman attending the event. Taking advantage of the situation, Sam managed to get a photograph with Paul. The woman was impressed and suggested that Sam meet her daughter because she she believed they would make a perfect match. As fate would have it, her daughter worked for the Far East Company. Sam immediately agreed to meet her. He charmed her so successfully that their relationship progressed very quickly. The following day, Sam found himself inside her bedroom. After making sure she was asleep, he quietly began searching for valuable information. Meanwhile, Sam had secretly stolen important accounting documents belonging to Far East. He photographed the papers and sent the images to the media. The evidence was finally beginning to expose the company's hidden activities. By now, it was clear that Victor had been secretly transferring money to Paul for years. When the news reached the chief judge of the High Court, he immediately summoned John and Daniel to explain what had happened. The judge questioned John about why he had confessed to the crime in the first place. John answered honestly, "Sir, Paul deceived me. He told me that everything had already been arranged and that I would be released from prison within a year." Fortunately, the judge was an honest man. After carefully listening to John's story and examining the circumstances, he realized that the original trial might have been manipulated. He therefore approved John's request for a retrial. Daniel also began to understand how serious the situation had become. He realized that if Paul's corruption was exposed, he could also be implicated for helping him. Meanwhile, Paul once again contacted the prison warden. He ordered him to keep a close eye on John and make sure he couldn't interfere with their plans. As a result, much of the evidence John had spent years collecting was destroyed. John was then falsely accused of misconduct and placed in solitary confinement. During a scheduled visit, he wanted to tell Sam about his next move, but the warden had already arranged for their conversation to be secretly monitored. Fortunately, John had anticipated this possibility. Instead of speaking openly, he communicated with Sam using a secret code they had developed earlier. Sam understood the message immediately. He withdrew a large amount of money from the bank and, despite the suspicious looks from the staff, left with Rob. His next target was Kevin, an old friend of Paul. Kevin was the man who had obtained the asthma inhaler and handed it over to Paul. Kevin was struggling financially, so Sam knew exactly how to persuade him. He offered Kevin money in exchange for his cooperation. With this crucial witness on his side, Sam moved on to his next target, Daniel. Sam disguised himself as a young prosecutor and attended an event filled with influential members of the legal community. Using his confidence and quick wit, he entertained the officers with clever jokes and smooth conversation. Daniel was impressed by his behavior. He assumed Sam must be the son of a powerful lawyer who had studied law abroad. Daniel took the initiative and tried to build a friendship with him. The next day, Sam visited Daniel's office carrying a forged document. Daniel welcomed him warmly, believing that Sam had powerful connections. During their conversation, Sam casually mentioned that Paul was about to face serious trouble. He claimed that he had heard several rumors and suggested that Daniel should distance himself from Paul. Daniel had already been worried about the same thing. After hearing Sam's warning, he became convinced that staying close to Paul could destroy his career. A short while later, Daniel had to attend a meeting and left Sam alone inside his office. Sam immediately began searching the room. Eventually, he discovered an important document containing a summons for Paul's testimony. This was exactly what he had been looking for. Using the signature practice John had forced him to perfect in prison, Sam forged Daniel's signature on the document. When Daniel returned, he was shocked to discover that a summons bearing his signature had already been sent to Paul. He immediately realized that Sam had manipulated him and dragged him into a dangerous situation. Now Daniel had no choice but to confront Paul. When Paul learned what had happened, he confronted Daniel directly, but Daniel refused to cooperate any further. He coldly told Paul that he had nothing left to discuss with him. Daniel then ordered the authorities to detain several men connected to Far East. Meanwhile, Sam stormed out of the building in anger. Unfortunately, one of Paul's men spotted him. The moment the information reached the company, its goons began hunting for Sam throughout the area. But Sam quickly came up with a clever escape plan. He found a hiding place, changed his clothes, put on goggles, and grabbed a baseball bat. Then he pretended to be one of the gang members searching for the traitor named Sam. For a moment, the disguise worked. But just as he was about to leave the elevator, one of the men recognized him. Sam was immediately captured and taken to their hideout. Fortunately, the police arrived in time and rescued him before the situation became even worse. However, Sam was arrested for impersonating a prosecutor. During the interrogation, Daniel expected him to be frightened, but Sam remained completely calm. John had already predicted that this situation would happen and had prepared Sam for exactly this moment. Sam knew precisely what he needed to say. As he began revealing information, Daniel's greed became obvious. He realized that this case could make him famous overnight. If he helped expose the corruption, he could become the prosecutor who freed an innocent man and brought down a powerful mayoral candidate. Meanwhile, Paul sensed that something was going seriously wrong, so he decided to use his old strategy once again. He went to visit John in prison and tried to convince him to cooperate. Paul told him that he had failed to find enough evidence and only needed 1 more month. He promised that once he became mayor, he would use his influence to secure John's release. But John refused to listen. He had already made the mistake of trusting Paul once. He wasn't going to confess to a crime he never committed a second time. Finally, the day of the retrial arrived. John knew that everything depended on what happened inside that courtroom. But before the proceedings could begin, Paul bribed one of the prisoners to attack John. The judge was prepared to postpone the hearing after seeing John's condition. Then John suddenly entered the courtroom. courtroom, badly injured but still determined to fight. The confident smile on Paul's face disappeared immediately. Sam was the first person to take the witness stand. He openly admitted that Far East had paid the protesters. He explained that he had been one of them and that their job was to deliberately clash with the police. He then revealed that the company's operation was directly connected to Paul. Sam had personally witnessed Victor handing money over to Paul. Then he revealed another crucial detail. Your Honor, the man who claimed to have asthma was also part of our group. He needed to use it regularly just to keep breathing. Paul immediately objected. I have never seen this man before and I have never met him. Everything he is saying is a lie. But Sam wasn't finished. He presented a photograph from the rally and pointed directly at Paul. Then explained this picture. We clearly had a connection. At that moment, Daniel made his final move. He presented the court with evidence showing the Far East Company's illegal financial activities. He explained that similar cases had been buried in the past, and the person responsible for protecting the company's interests was none other than Paul. Despite all the accusations, Paul remained unusually quiet. He believed the most important piece of evidence had already disappeared. The inhaler had supposedly been thrown into the river, so he thought there was no way anyone could prove what he had done. But then something completely unexpected happened. Paul's old friend Kevin suddenly appeared in court. Kevin confessed that the young gangster had actually died because he was unable to use his asthma inhaler. The courtroom fell silent. John then played a recording that Kevin had secretly provided. The recording captured a conversation between Paul and Kevin as they planned how to cover up the crime. The audio stopped just before the two men discussed what to do with the inhaler. Then John stepped forward and held up an inhaler. This is the inhaler. Paul stared at it in disbelief. He had been certain that the evidence was gone forever, but somehow it had been recovered. Paul suddenly lost his composure. How is that possible? It was thrown into the river. The courtroom immediately erupted with tension. Then the rest of the recording began playing. In the missing portion, Paul's voice could clearly be heard ordering Kevin to throw the inhaler into the river. Now the entire conspiracy was exposed. There was nowhere left for Paul to hide. Overwhelmed by panic, he began shouting and causing a scene inside the courtroom. The powerful man who had once controlled everyone around him had finally lost everything. In the end, Paul was held accountable for his crimes, while John was officially acquitted and finally cleared of the murder charge. But surprisingly, Daniel benefited the most from the entire case. By helping uncover the corruption and expose the conspiracy, he stole the spotlight and became a rising star in the legal world. And after years of suffering, John finally walked out of prison as a free man. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.